talent, and technology, because we are a fast-growing company, as we show. We are, as you would say, a classical business process outsourcing company. But more of that, we are experts in communication. We are experts in communication between the consumer and the brands. And we enhance our clients' brands by making that communication in different ways. When we think of people, and when we think of talent, when we think of technology, we think scale. And we scale fast. And the opportunity for us in this region, in Western Africa and Nigeria, is to scale fast. That has been a journey so far done, and that is a journey we're going to do in the next couple of years here as well. Because talent, technology, means scale. We provide a lot of classical service, what we call the front office, the technical support, the back office. But you might also see that over the years since you started, that kind of communication has been digitized. When we started 44 years back, that was one single channel. That was a classical phone line. Nowadays, we have a digital experience. And digital experience is also connected to what I see as an opportunity for us in this region. Because this is a large region. We talk about 1.4 billion people, where approximately 65% of that 1.4 is under 30 years. And that is a new consumer. Our clients are looking to that growing consumer base, the young consumer base that want to interact in a digital way to the brands, not by phone, not by going to the office. So if I'm going to continue to scale this company that we will, I need to make sure that I'm surrounded by ecosystem that is connected to the technology existing today and a talent pool that can apply it every single time, because my future client needs to be engaged in that digital way. When I take it one step further, we are already now looking into how we communicate with our clients in the artificial intelligence, in the metaverse. And that, for all of us in this region, puts emphasis on something else. Now the contact is not physical, it's not even digital in many ways, WhatsApp, everything we know, it becomes a third dimension, and that will happen as well. So, we started 44 years back. We are today 420,000 people. We are about 15,000 people in this region. And ambition in Sub-Saharan Africa is super strong for the reason I mentioned before. Consumer base, talent, and availability around the technology. That's why we're moving on. We have managed today, thanks to that, to locate approximately 310,000 people to work from home. That is a talent enabled by technology to not take the bus into VI every single morning, to save themselves 4 hours, add quality of life. That is the difference when we start applying technology and people, what it can bring to society. We cannot do it all over the place. It depends, we're selective. But I want us to think always from the opportunity perspective. When we see Lagos today, it is a struggling traffic, chaos, access to buildings. But applying the right technology, the right talent, we can actually surpass that one. So, I will not go into the details, but Mr. Alake mentioned one comment during your presentation. He reached out to all of us and he said, does it make sense? And yes, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I've had the pleasure for the last years to work with Mr. Alake. I've worked with a couple of the initiatives for Lagos State. I've seen the different policies. I've seen talent here. And yes, it does make a lot of sense. If I look at the fundamental reasons why we see the growth moving forward from a corporate perspective, is yes, technology is booming. I don't look at what is the 65,000 people that do STEM. I look at the 600,000 that graduates in Nigeria every single year, and I look at another probably 100,000, because then I can scale 5 times faster. That's a fundamental reason why we're here. The second piece is the digitalization. I'm getting a bit old right now, but if I look at the young generation and the tech savviness, the speed of adopting new technologies, that's relevant for me. It's super relevant. There's not a better region in the world to do this than Sub-Saharan Africa. Not one single better than that. When I look at the opportunity to, for once, address what we call diversity, inclusiveness, this is also a great opportunity. You mentioned certain initiatives where females come to tech and STEM, and that's all good. In this area, we can do far better, and we're doing that today. We can bring in to our staff approximately 60% females. We can also train them, we can enable them, and they can move on later on, if so desired, into what I call the digitized economy. I want us all to note that, yes, we are a large corporation, but the majority of the economical backbone in Nigeria, Western Africa, is still the small and medium enterprise. The small and medium enterprise needs to be enabled as well, because then you can broaden the base. Because talking about technology, access to technology talent, without getting the small and medium enterprise into the scheme, that does not become a very inclusive discussion. It becomes a smaller base the whole time. So I want us to think of technology talent, also making sure it access the larger population. But here we have approximately 55% females. The tech infrastructure, which is for us crucial when we invest, has essentially been done. I had the pleasure to work with a lot of fiber and cellular operators for the last 13 years in Africa. We have taken a giant step in this region, a giant step. Today, the capability to work from home at other locations. Technology that has enabled us to work from home sometimes. It has enabled me, with a lower latency and bandwidth, to be able to provide these services from different locations. The infrastructure starts to come in place. So when I put everything together, when I sum up the numbers, from a corporate perspective, our bet is very, very clear. And the bet is always around the opportunity, not about the challenges. Let's have a common definition of this. And I think I'm going to leave it like that, and we can open up the discussion for the rest of the panelists and have that as a bit of an input of why we invest in this region, why we believe firmly in Nigeria, and why we think both talent and technology will bring us there. Thank you very much for listening to me, okay?
Is this on? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lars, for setting the tone for the panel. It's an honor to have you with us, along with all our distinguished panelists today. My name is Olamidun Majakodumi Ogundoyin. I'm the founder of Suya Bistro and the country director for Nexford University. Nexford is a next-generation licensed accredited university that's empowering economic mobility around the world, and we're doing that by preparing talent now for the future of work. I stand on all existing protocols. I actually read a joke recently that said, the way everyone stands on all existing protocols at official events, that leg. I would love to get right into it. So today on our panel, our theme really is focused around preparing talent for the future of work as it relates to economic and societal development. And we have some fantastic panelists who have already been introduced as they came on stage. But I'd love to go around one by one for us to just introduce yourself again, please, and what your organization's mission is as it relates to what we're here to discuss on this panel. So in just about a minute each, and then we'll then go into in-depth questions, and then we'll leave some time towards the end of the session for Q&A from the audience. So I'd love to start with Mr. Suma.
Thank you so much, Ola. William Suma is my name. I'm one of the senior advisors and program managers at UNDP in Nigeria. And the talent management issue for UNDP is a development issue. We strongly believe that a country that is able to harness its human capital stands on very solid ground in terms of translating its aspirations into a tangible transformation for its society. And so from a UNDP perspective, as a development agency of the UN system, our objective is to really address the very root causes that undermine the ability of countries to be able to harness the potential of its people, particularly young people who are not just the future, but they are the now. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. And next we have Dr. Usman, who's representing the DG of NITDA.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to be representing my CEO. My name is, as first was introduced, is Dr. Usman Abdullahi. I am the Director, IT Infrastructure Solutions at the National Information Technology Development Agency. NITDA. NITDA is a federal government agency that is responsible for coordinating information technology development issues, regulatory issues, as well as provision of advisory across the country. So it's not, its role is not just at the federal level or state level, but our minister was here at AOT 3.0. My DG was here as well, but for me, it's the first time, and I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And he who needs no other introduction, would you please, just tell us a little bit about what your organization is doing now to prepare talent for, the future of technology?
Well, number one is that we are planning for growth. That comes with a lot of facility logistics. Second thing, we're recruiting. And recruiting is one step of the way that people come in, but more importantly, I'm looking for partnerships. Partnerships we can work with local players in Nigeria to build up the confidence, because there's one set of competence that I need now, but there's one set of competence that we need for tomorrow, and more importantly, one set of competence that my staff needs for tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, I don't expect anyone to stay at the same company for the next 5 years. And I think the best company contribution that I can provide is to make sure that, number one, I equip them for the current work. Secondly, I equip them for the next work when they leave. Because the best staff you can have are the ones that leave with something earned and something that can be an investment for the next job. So that's what we're doing right now.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. And now up to Dr. Bayo Adekombi, who is our founder and lead consultant at Data Science Nigeria. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk about talent. I lead Data Science Nigeria, a non-profit that has been leading the charge in building competence and capacity in data science and artificial intelligence. Actually, one of the most recognized in Africa in terms of learning, research, solution delivery, and consulting. Interestingly, I started as a product of my understanding working in the private sector for about 22 years, where I had the privilege of leading the largest consumer database in Africa for two largest telecoms operators, working in 22 countries as a C-level executive. And I went for my PhD, and I saw the huge gap between PhD concept and the real problem in the industry. And that was why I started Data Science Nigeria, to build capacity in developing homegrown solutions by democratizing knowledge so that every child everywhere can learn the skills they need to build the future they deserve through Data Science Nigerian project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And up to our Madam Commissioner, Madam Ade Fisayo, can you please tell us a little bit about how you're preparing the education, what you're doing to prepare our talents, our students today to be ready for the future of tech in the workforce?
Thank you very much. My name is Folashade Ade Fisayo, the Commissioner for Education, like she said. And one thing that we've been trying to do in the past 3.5 years is to move the education sector, which has been less innovative than other sectors. And I'll say this, it's not Nigeria peculiarly, it's something global, that the education sector hasn't felt very comfortable with technology. So what we focused on is getting ourselves to understand that we must future-proof our children. We must get our children ready for the realities of the workplace. The young people who came in today who won those prizes will probably not enter the workforce until about 2030. So whatever we are teaching them today has got to be relevant for 2030. And a lot of focus in Lagos State has gone into this. You heard Mr. Deputy Governor tell us about what we're doing with EcoExcel, so that right from primary school, even early years, the teachers are teaching using technology, and we are teaching the children to use technology as well. At secondary school level, what we're doing with our comprehensive schools, where we are deliberately teaching children the skills of coding, artificial intelligence, robotics, and so on, deliberately, because we know that this is the reality of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So I'll start a little bit of a background before we move to our more in-depth questions. So this is for William Suma. In August 2022, the Daily Mail reported that the number of student visas issued to Nigerians going to Britain rose from about 65,000 to a 686% increase. And there's a significant drop in Nigerian tech talent due to mass resignations, the brain drain, and the talent exodus of citizens in search for professional opportunities and favorable living conditions. While these moves are encouraged and are important to personal development and growth, we must discuss strategies that can help identify, develop, and retain Africa-based tech talent towards achieving economic growth and decent work for all. An approach that will help develop the country's economy, and then also position an effective system to help talent development and retention across Africa. So with that background, can you please tell us how, in your opinion, Africa can develop and retain its talents?
Thank you so much. It's on, right? Thank you so much for that question, and I think I'll perhaps approach it in two ways, right? And you've touched on one already. Is it possible to fully curb and retain the movement of talent? I'll be the first one to say no. And because people move for very different reasons, right? There are people who are moving because there's an opportunity that allows them to further their own development. I think for me, my question usually in this regard is, how do we ensure that once that immediate or short-term need has been met, how do we reinvest back? But that's a different discussion altogether. I do think, and Madam Commissioner, you've spoken on one, we really need to reimagine what the skills and the training we're providing to our children now. Because the jobs of not even 2030, the jobs of 2025 are requiring very different skill sets. And I'll challenge all of us, for example, if you can go to your university where you studied, those of my age and above, if you can recognize in the curriculum anything in that curriculum, then we've got a problem. Because that means that we're basically recycling the same learning material and assuming that we're preparing this generation for the future. Unfortunately, young people are so connected, they are online, they can interact with their peers, the digital citizens. They understand what their peers are studying in the West, across the border, and they're yearning for that. So one for me would be, the best way to retain our talent is to be able to rethink the skills we're transferring. If I'm getting into a business development or a business administration school, and my goal is to build a business, and I spend 4 years learning the theory of business, chances are very high I'm looking at a kid who's in a business school in Europe, who their first assessment is to work towards an MVP for a business. That by the time you're graduating at 4th year, you've already put out a prototype that is ready to go to market. And those are the things that we need to think about. And this generation is looking for that. So that is one. I think secondly, I'm a big proponent of training. And I admire the work that is being done on skilling. My main concern is how are we retaining that skill from an application perspective? So the risk and the danger we have is that we are training and training. This generation wants to apply the skills that they're learning, but then when they get out of that training funnel, they're not finding an ecosystem that absorbs that skill. And yet, talent is basically the new goal. Let's face it, there's a scramble and a battle for talent. And right now, it's not even just on the continent, it's global. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I will not mention their name because they're all in the ecosystem and we all know them. He had a staff member, high-performing staff member on his team. His staff member resigned and left the country. He's now having to hire his staff member who's out of the country, paying him a higher salary to serve him remote. And what is interesting about this dimension is that this individual says he has the infrastructure to be able to work remotely. So that means he's got power and electricity. He's got internet. He can be able to sit anywhere and serve as many clients as he can. So for me, there's three things. What skills are we transferring in universities and in schools? Secondly, can we create an absorption capacity that can be able to take this talent when they step out of the learning ecosystem? The things we call jobs. We need to create spaces where after I have been trained, I can then be able to apply the skills. And then thirdly, we need to think about an infrastructure, and that's why I commend the Lagos State government thinking about a tech city. That if I have an idea, I know that I can come to an ecosystem where I'm not struggling about energy, I'm not struggling about access to internet, there's a community, there's a support infrastructure that can allow me to build a solution. So for me, those are the three things I would say. I flip them, those are challenges, and I turn them around. That's one way of retaining talent, recognizing that there's a lot more, of course, that needs to be done.
Absolutely. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much for that. And I think you said a lot of very key things that we need to really place into the African context. One, there's a huge deficit already. And two, we need to be updating our curriculums to prepare for the future. And the future is always changing. The skills that we need today is going to be very different from the skills that we need 5 years from now and 10 years from now. So I would love to turn to Madam Commissioner, Mrs. Adefisayo, to ask how or what methods can we use now? What tools can we use in our education system here in Nigeria to be able to leapfrog us to even meet the standards of today?
Thank you again. I think, just like he said, the gentleman before me said, we really have to address our curriculum. At present, the curriculum is very heavy on content, lots of topics and subjects, and less, there's less done, less inclusion of skills. But what we have been able to do in Lagos State, especially with the comprehensive schools, where we are not hindered by general curriculum, is that we've built into the skills some certain important skills that, into everything that we are teaching, certain skills that every student must have. So we must address our curriculum. And that's why we would include in our curriculum if you want to learn plumbing, if you want to learn fashion design, there are some things you still have to learn. Financial literacy, entrepreneurship, digital mastery of digital language, of communication, and so on. Branding, personal branding, things like public speaking, all the, what we like to call the 21st century skills of communication, of collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, innovation. We have to infuse all these into our curriculum, and that's one step that we've taken. They are not subjects. These 21st century skills, they are not really subjects. You can't say, it's time for problem solving. You integrate it across the curriculum. So I think for me, the first thing that we have to do at all levels is to see how we can integrate these skills. This, of course, means that even our teacher training, because a big problem that we have really is how disengaged teachers are from the 21st century skills. So we've had to do a lot also with training and retraining teachers so they understand the concept of integration of these skills across all subjects. I think for one, we have to address our curriculum and address teacher training so that we deliberately build all these. I mean, I could give many examples, but I think for me, number one is the curriculum.
Thank you for that, Ma. So those are our two top priorities, is curriculum and teacher training. And with that, let's move to private sector. So Mr. Lars, as an employer of choice, Teleperformance has set the highest standards in employee experience with commendable efforts in creating a work environment that encourages employees to learn and develop new skills that will prepare them for the bright future. With the recent palpable growth in technology, there's also a need to further adapt to the future of learning and consistently leverage technology to deliver exceptional learning and experiences across Africa. Many companies in Africa are having a swift transition into the digital technology space and building skills for the future to help tackle socioeconomic challenges in the coming years. So my question for you is, what, in your opinion, are the factors hindering the adoption of tech talent development and ways that you think we can address them?
Thanks for that question. The top hindering reasons is a complex thing. We talked before about how to broaden the base. We talked about curriculums. We talk about having more females into STEM, etc. That's all good. From my perspective, I think we should all think of what we're doing is about how we get trained. How is the access to that learning? The access to learning is what I try to facilitate, and that means it cannot always be university. It cannot always be, extra hours on the weekend when people should rest. How do I facilitate the space and time so people can train online? Have that time, 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day to access the training, create their own curriculum at their own pace with different learning methodologies. So I think one of the problems today is that we're still a bit, thinking of the classical model that need to go through the chain, the whole universities and get the curriculum. I think we need to rethink that, and coming from a private side, it's a far more agile methodology, because one thing clear is that when we hire tech talent, we check the curriculum, we check the universities, that's true. But we normally check whether they have that kind of certifications in specific technologies, and more important so, are they updated, okay? The university degree becomes more of a tick in a box, but if you have an old, coding standard 15 years back, you're not relevant. And that brings us to the second thing, is that as a private sector, I need to facilitate for my employees the opportunity not only to skill, but to upskill and reskill. If I, as an organization, stop doing that, and for financial short-term reasons say that we cannot afford it, long-term I will have a problem with my enterprise. My biggest investment is to find the time to make sure that the staff can re-skill the whole time. That's the only way to become relevant as an enterprise, as an employee.
Thank you very much for that. I want to ask a very candid question that's a follow-up to that. And it's, are you confident in the graduates that you hire at Teleperformance, the most recent graduates? So if you have someone coming in as entry-level staff, just fresh out of university, what efforts are you doing to get them up to speed to be able to perform in your organization? Are you able to are you confident in what they've learned in the university, or do you feel like you're
Very short answer, I'm fully confident. Because what I've seen so far is that they come with a super resilience, with an eagerness to learn, and those are two super important attributes. You can have the best cum laude in any degree, but if you lack resilience and passion to learn, you're out. So yes, I'm fully convinced after 3.5 years working with tech talent in Nigeria that they actually have it.
Awesome, thank you for that response. So we know soft skills are just as important as hard skills. Okay, so we're going to move on to Dr. Usman at NITA. The National Information Technology Development Agency is carrying out the mandate for ICT capacity building organizations, training and for women in ICT, covering key skills areas in entrepreneurship, in business, in ICT and communication. This program has been noticed to key into the federal government's economic recovery and growth plan and support digital literacy and reduce the gender gap in digital technology. The information and communication sector is growing and creating thousands of new jobs every year and providing opportunities for development for women in Nigeria. So my question is, how can we be more inclusive in making sure every person is equipped with the required skills necessary for them to contribute their bit towards economic growth?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's very important. I think the background that you have given is key. The National Information Technology Development Agency, on behalf of government, does carry out a number of capacity building initiatives. Now, the idea is not for the agency to execute, to train Nigerians, but of course to serve as a model for the private sector, for the public sector organizations that are responsible for capacity building, as well as, concerned individuals to ensure that at least they take that and then they work with it. And so, in order to enhance really full participation, there could be about 5 key things. Of course, they are not the only things, but 5 key things. One is identifying the role of government. Government needs to be strategic. That's why I'm glad, I'm glad to be here. This AOT Lagos is one of the strategic initiatives that actually, governments need to do. So government needs to be able to provide the enabling environment. This enabling environment could be through policies, could be through, all the support that government provides. There's so many things that government should do. So at the national level, because there are good case studies that can be taken from what is happening here. At the national level, what NIDA is doing is to create policies that would help towards enhancing what is currently available. For instance, as part of the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy, there is the Digital Literacy and Skills Pillar. Now, that pillar expects that by 2030, we should be 95% digitally literate. We should have that 95% digital literacy across the country, not in one place. So how do we achieve that? So we at the National Information Technology Development Agency came up with the National Digital Literacy and Skills Framework that provides the basic, because you have to have means of measurement. If you can't measure, then you won't know. If you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there. So the National Digital Literacy Framework is one of the things that government is doing to ensure that every player within the sector, has a framework, has a standard. If you're assessing skills, what do you assess? There are international standards. There are European standards. We know all those, so what we have done is to come up with a standard that we say this is ours, taking our peculiarities into consideration. So that is just one of the initiatives. Secondly, one key thing is, yes, it's about talent and ensuring that, everybody keys in and is inclusive. It cuts across every strata of the society. The key thing is to know where we are. I'm glad, the SA to the governor in his presentation on the journey so far, the achievements that has been made, there are a number of research activities that have been carried out to identify where we are. So what we are doing in partnership with CC Hub is to really assess the talent. So we are doing a technology skills gap assessment that would help towards identifying really, where we are, what sort of skills are there in terms of the various stratas. How then do we address those? So the idea is to have a national technology talent strategy that every sector of government, every state government, local government can key into to identify. Because the key thing is that Nigeria, has the advantage. We have a very youthful population. About, only 2.7% of Nigerian population is above 60. Only 2.7. So we have a very youthful population compared to others. So this issue of, we have to be strategic. So the idea is to have a national talent strategy that will ensure every sector handles. So that's one. The second is really looking at what my colleagues have already said. We focus on the curriculum because you have to focus on employability skills. There is need for you. It's not just about training, but when you train these citizens, will they get employed? So that is key. So the third is ensuring that you do strategic partnership because government, just as I said, is to provide an enabling environment. We need to be strategic in the way we develop that talent that cuts across every strata. So strategic partnership is key in that. So, for us, there's a series of strategies I'm sure you might have been following that we have partnership with, of course, the state government too has partnership with both nationally and internationally with the Microsoft to train 5 million Nigerians and so on and so forth. So these are just the three. Lastly, let me just mention the investment. Funding is key, very, very critical. And the last is to provide incentives. Because of time. So those are the things that would help towards ensuring that whatever initiative we have is inclusive and it makes the best outcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for all the information and those insights. We love to continue following the journey of the programs that you're putting together at NITA. And I'm over to Mr. Tokunbo Wahab, who is a special advisor to Lagos State Governor. Excuse me. Sorry. Excuse me. So we're going to ask the final question. And I'm going to set a little bit of context as well. So technology has made it possible for all schools to offer their students a wide variety of interesting options. Technology can help students learn and understand the material, and it can also be used as a tool for communication and research, as well as help improve the talents of students in different cores. So my question, as it relates to Lagos State government, is what areas can the state government, through education, improve tech talent development, specifically in Lagos?
I assume the question is meant for me?
Yes, as the Lagos State representative.
Okay. We've said, panelists have said a lot of the things that we need to do. Clearly, we need to address our curriculum, clearly. And clearly, we need to include, not just integrating the core skills like I mentioned, the deliberate curriculum for developing technology. For instance, we've all looked on technology as Word, PowerPoint, and so on, but really deep curriculum on content for technology. Like I'm particular about us learning robotics, artificial intelligence, and so on. So generally our curriculum, number one. And number two, who teaches? Education is based on certain things. What are you teaching? Who is teaching? Where are they teaching? So at the end of the day, there are many options for our students. Again, we have to address devices, access to devices, because a lot of the children, especially in some of our public schools, are unable to get devices. So again, we have to address devices, and this means we must collaborate with the private sector. A lot of the things that we've done in education has been in collaboration, people providing their curriculum, people providing devices, working with us on teaching and training training our teachers and so on. It has got to be a marriage of town and gown. It's got to be a marriage of public and private sectors. So these are some of the things that Lagos State just has to do, and what we are doing now at the moment. Like I said, summarizing, addressing what we are teaching, that is the curriculum content, the subjects that we are teaching, providing options for our children so that we are not limiting them to the careers of those days where someone like my dad will say you have to do medicine, but knowing that there is a myriad of options for these children. And many of the careers that they will do, as they say, haven't even been invented. So we have to build into our curriculum a flexibility of mind, an ability to be able to work in various media, milieus, and so on. So what we teach, who teaches, we have to address our teacher training curriculum and deliberately ensure that our teachers are able to deliver. And of course, we have to ensure that our students have an environment within which they can learn. If you provide software and all, and they don't have devices, there is just no point. So again, we have to ensure that our students have access to the devices that they need, and like I said, in collaboration with all stakeholders and partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I'm going to round up with Dr. Bayo Adekambi. Can you please share some final words for us on this panel as it relates to building tech talent and the future of workplace? And then in addition to that, can you also please round up with one word that you can use to describe your organization's approach that you're going to take in the next 2 to 3 years, in the next short term, to be able to gear us up for building a smarter Lagos or Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I think, like everyone has said, we're in an emergency as far as talent acceleration is concerned. To build smarter Lagos, we need smarter talents. And talents are raw materials. The same way you look for oil, you refine them, you package them, you enhance them, and you deploy them, that is the same intentionality we must bring to talent development. It cannot just be speaking, it must be a lot of doing. And there's a lot of use cases to look at. I always look at India as a use case. Today, in the world of AI and data, 16% of the talent are in India. From data annotation to advanced automation system, the country is leading. Why? Number one, policy. And I'm so glad that the commissioner has spoken about that. We need right policy to drive intervention. In India today, from grade 6, every child is learning data science and coding. It's intentional. It is known. You must practice it. Number two, practice. It's not just for this student to learn this, they cannot operationalize it. Now, they now have what they call ideathon and jobathon. What does that mean? While you are learning in school, you can take on holiday jobs, and companies are incentivized to support. While I was Chief Innovation, Digital and Analytics Officer at MTN, I started those kind of things where bringing students, at they are learning. And platforms. We have to create platforms for people to solve the world problem. Of course, we're going to have jackpot, guys with jackpot. But when the pipeline is big, there will always have those that will stay with us. So let's build enough so that even when people jackpot, there will still be people that will stay with us and build solutions that solve the world problem. And that is the mandate for all of us. We've got to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And your one word to describe your approach?
Be intentional, be focused, go do it. It is time.
Fantastic.
That was more than one word, but can I ask the rest of my panelists the same question? Just one word to describe your approach in the short term. Let's just do it. I guess we're doing 3 words now.
Well, ours is just building on what he said too, is...
One word, sir.
Getting it done.
Getting it done. Thank you. Leverage. I like that. Lagos State.
I have one word. I have many. Let me just say, be deliberate, be intentional, be focused, and build partnerships, collaborate.
Partnerships and collaborate. I love that. Thank you, Ma. All right, and with that, we'd like to take some questions from our audience.
We'll only have time for just one question, unfortunately, so that we can get to hear from our keynote session with the Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Bank. Just one question. So that I'm not blamed, I'll hand over to the moderator to choose where the question will come from. Anyone, any questions? And if there's none, it's perfectly okay. We have a question over there. Let us know who you're addressing your question to. And it's one question, please. Not like 5 in 1. Or they say one word and you use 3. Your name, what your question is, so we can round up this session. Thank you.
My name is Fortune Ben. I'm a member of the Elite Smart Town community. It's an aggregation of smart young teenagers, and I have about 2 questions.
I literally just said one question. Quickly, very quickly.
Okay, so my question is, so studies have shown that about 80% of electricity is generated, or about 80% of electricity in Lagos dwells or thrives on generators. So if we're trying to plug the gap and engage in talent retention as, a program, we understand that there are talents that are leaving, and then there are skills that there's a skills gap. And so if we want to plug that gap, how do we invest majorly in electricity to make sure that that gap doesn't exist? Because it's one thing to, have all of these programs in place, and another thing to have something running those programs.
Thank you very much, Fortune. Is that question to anyone in particular? Is it to anyone in particular? Okay, open floor. Over to you, moderator.
I think we need Mr. President in the room. But how about we direct it to our panelists in a way that says, how do we just do it when we don't have lights?
I think Dr. Bayo might take this one.
I do understand that there are problems, and if I ask our friend from Bangladesh, he will tell you. I've done some work in India. There are problems everywhere, and I do agree with what you've said. Of course, we're seeing a lot of interventions happening around identifying where the problems are. We're seeing solar being deployed, a lot of off-grid emerging. Things are happening. But the truth is, we cannot wait for everything to happen. Things must happen in parallel. Even in the worst of the world, things are happening as far as tech is concerned. Go to the most remotest village in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. Go to Bangalore in India. Even without power, people are working. And that's why there are laptops today that can work 4 hours charged. That's why we all charge ourselves. So let us understand what works within our limited context and just make it work within our reality. And that is the story. Let's make it work.
Thank you very much. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause to our first plenary discussion. Tech talent workforce towards economic and societal growth. Quick picture, photo op with the press. Gentlemen of the press, just a quick photo op. Just some housekeeping. SK, how you doing? All right, good. So we have just some housekeeping so you know what else is happening at AOT. So at the breakout session room 3, we have stands. That's the AWS stands, Amazon Web Services. They have information for startups, especially those of you interested in up to $100,000 of the AWS Active Credit Initiative. Yes, please can we have Mr. Deputy Governor to join them as well? And the SA as well. Thank you.